Well, welcome to the second session of Life Goals. You know, our hope really isn't that you'll learn some things. I mean, that would be good. We all want to grow in knowledge. But our hope is that we start to grow in character, that we would start to become more Christ-like. That's why we decided to study the fruits of the Spirit. That's a picture that Paul paints in Galatians of what it looks like to have the character of Christ. And so he gives us some goals that we can grow toward. And today we're going to take a look at the first fruit that he gives us, the fruit of love. Now, to be fair to Paul, he probably meant this as sort of an overarching fruit. All the other fruits that we study will be different angles on how we can grow in love. But I wanted to at least take this first week and study the biblical concept of love so we can get the picture of the direction that we're headed. A few weeks ago, my daughter came home and said to me, "Dad, I really like this guy." And I did what any good dad would do. I said, "No, you don't." And she said, "Dad, I do. I just really like him." And I said, "Well, choose not to." She looked at me like I was from another planet. "Dad, how could you choose not to like somebody?" I mean, "Dad, I can't help what my heart feels." I said, "Of course you can." You know, the writers of the New Testament realized that they were going to have some trouble communicating a concept of love that all of us could understand. I mean, when you say to me, "Kaz, you should really grow in love," that really doesn't even make sense, right? I mean, it was like the Grinch whose heart was 3 sizes too small. How can I just make my heart grow? How do I grow in love? You see, love, the way it was explained at the time of the New Testament and the language they have, was often around this idea of desire or delight. Like, I desire this person or I delight in this thing. But the New Testament writers had a different concept of love that they wanted us to get. It was one that was grounded in their story, in the Old Testament. You see, they had pictures of these promises that God had made to them. We call them the covenants. And God made promises to his people. He said, "I will be your God, and you will be my people." And there was really nothing they could do about it. Didn't matter which direction they ran. Didn't matter how badly they messed up. They were God's people because God had promised. And then this one, God promised to them. He said, "I will bless you. And through this blessing, I will bless the whole world." They wanted us to understand a deeper, richer kind of love. It was grounded in these covenants. We only see promises like this, if ever at all today, probably around weddings, right? In weddings, people promise to each other. They make covenants. They say, "I will be with you no matter what, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad. We're richer or poorer, it doesn't matter. I'm on your team. I'm with you." They wanted us to get this idea of a love which is more of a disposition than it is a desire. That I would turn myself in your direction. That I would be for you. That I would want what is best for you. That I would even sacrifice for you. And so they took this obscure word in their language, agape, hardly ever used at all, and they decided to fill it with meaning. And it becomes the primary love word in the New Testament. It's used over 320 times. And the concept really means I'm on your team, I'm with you, I lean into you. Cami and I sometimes use this kind of language with each other. We need it sometimes when a conversation is going south, when the relationship feels like it's at odds. One of us will call time out and just give this little reminder. "Hey, I'm on your team. I'm with you. I want what's best for you, no matter what." If we start to understand this idea of love, then we can kind of get what Jesus is talking about. If he says we should grow in love, well, we might be able to grow in this kind of love. In fact, in the passage we'll read today, Jesus says, you know, your job is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And I want us to talk about a couple different ways that we could actually grow in this kind of love. Now, there are 3 things I'm going to give you to grow this week in loving. The first is that you would choose to love people, right? That you would choose to be for someone, that you would start to change your disposition and move in their direction. Who do you need to choose to love? Sometimes when Cammie and I are having a problem with one of our kids, we realize that it would just be easier, at least for us, to just back off and give them their space. But we remind each other, hey, as parents, it's usually our job to lean in when there are problems. Well, who do you need to lean in with this week? A second way that you can grow in love is by actually growing in compassion. Part of the passage we'll read this week is about the Good Samaritan. You may be familiar with that story. What it highlights is that at the heart of love is compassion. And did you know there's been a bunch of research on compassion lately? What they found is that compassion is something you can actually grow in. It's like a muscle that when you exercise it, you get better at it. There's a whole field called emotional intelligence that give us a lot of practices that we can do to grow in things like compassion. One is real simple. It's just to start by listening. Just to listen to the people around us. Listen to their heart and their needs and their longings. And then you can start to imagine yourself in their shoes. Try to see the world the way that they see the world. Try to put yourself in their place. We're told that the more we practice that, the more we exercise this idea of putting ourselves in others' shoes, the more we'll grow in compassion. And the more you grow in compassion, the more you grow in the ability to love. And then you can work on compassion by actually just working on being more grateful. If you start to take notice of all the ways you've been blessed, all the different things that you've been given in your life, and you pause for just a minute and you're grateful. You might do this in a prayer, being grateful to God. You might be the kind of person that writes it out, all the things to be grateful for. But the more we become grateful people, the better we get at compassion. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start to choose to move in the direction of people. I want you to choose to love some folks. And then I want you to work out this muscle of compassion. And finally, I want you to learn to speak a new language. Now, I know that one sounds pretty hard, but there's this concept called the 5 love languages. Some of you may be familiar with that. There are books written and seminars you can go to. You can even take an assessment to find out what your love language is. I'll give you just the 20-second overview here. The idea is simple, that each of us have different ways that we understand love. If you want to love me, you need to spend some time with me. Each of us has these ways that we're loved, and we would call that our love language, our primary love languages, and it might have 1 or 2 ways. And because those are my primary love languages, those are also the go-to love languages I have when I'm trying to love the people around me. The problem is, they're often not the same language. In fact, my wife, one of her primary languages is acts of service. She loves it when things are done for her. It just communicates to her that she's of value and worth. So when she has a Saturday, when she wakes up and there's nothing on the calendar, she thinks to herself, here's a list of all the things we can get done. She thinks, I'm going to love Kaz by doing a whole bunch of stuff for him and encouraging him to join in on these tasks. But when I wake up on that same Saturday morning, I think to myself, oh, I want to love Cammie. And because my primary love language is quality time, I think I'm going to spend all day with her and do nothing. We're just going to be together. Now you can imagine we're both wanting to love each other, but what happens is frustration. But did you know that you can learn to speak another language? So this week, I want you to pay attention to the love languages of the people around you. What are they? What can you do to move in that direction, to begin to speak a different language of love? We can grow in love. We can choose to be for people. We can begin to exercise compassion, and we can start to speak the language of love of the people around us. I hope that you start to put this into practice this week and that you would grow in love.